Despite the fact that I am currently creating my final collection, the goal of Counterconscious is not to make clothes. The goal of Counterconscious is something different. The goal of Counterconscious is to present radical alternatives that are for the people and of the people. Ultimately, culture is not made by companies. Culture is made by people. And that is a very, very important thing to know and celebrate and remember. Counterconscious is in some way already established within the local community. Queer Craft Club has been running for well over 2 years now, and other things have been happening in the community as part of the organisation too, including like various community workshops. And as I have said, being in the community, being for the people is the most important thing. The point of Counterconscious is to do something different, to do a radical alternative. And part of this vision is to create clothing that is not just an alternative aesthetic, but is to be actually alternative as an option. Part of this is creating a real alternative to what we currently have, which is the appropriation of countercultural aesthetics by large companies that ultimately have no accountability or real connection to the communities that they are drawing from, and this causes real and significant harm within the world. Not only is this sort of cultural appropriation within the more racialized sense, where sort of white capitalist businesses end up using often black aesthetics and not knowing what they mean, and being an extractive force of this culture and this identity and intellectual property, and not giving back to these communities in any kind of way. Especially not in a material sense, such as hiring people and working on a collaboration. This happens in all kinds of ways, though. This also happens with the proliferation of people, for example, Frida Kahlo and Che Guevara, who themselves were communist revolutionaries that would be spinning in their graves as to the way that their faces, like who they are as people, are used as symbols for mass consumption. I am happy to be wearing this t-shirt because I have actually read Marx. There is an authenticity here to my interaction with this clothing that is not going on when Shein made a Frida Kahlo collection, right? One of these other examples of this is sort of punk and hippie aesthetics, right? And there's a lot of alternative clothing companies out there, but do they really follow the values of the people that they're selling to? One thing that is seen all over the place and people know very famously is the logo of the CND, which is more commonly referred to as the peace sign. And it has been popularized and proliferated to the point where the logo is almost meaningless because it is almost entirely divorced from its original meaning as the symbol for an activist group, and that activist group was related to the Cold War, and still is related to anti-nuclear and anti-war campaigns, for example. A lot of this appropriation of countercultural aesthetics also includes a lot of greenwashing. This includes brands that are in many positions in the industry, including Vivienne Westwood and H&M. Vivienne Westwood made her runways into so-called protests. Meanwhile, she couldn't even stretch to her own t-shirts in her own brand being made of organic cotton. H&M is very willing to sell band t-shirts and punk aesthetic clothing and try on the aesthetics of environmentalism for marketing purposes, to the point where it has been sued and many lawsuits have been put against it for this fake aesthetic only alternative, this sort of postmodernist consumption. One of the core values of counterconscious is authenticity, and to encourage that kind of deep, meaningful value and that deep, meaningful thought, to fight against this aesthetic first and aesthetic only mode of being and production that we're currently in. This is built into the name. The counter part of counterconscious stands for counterculture and the beautiful communities that make it. Counterculture doesn't happen in a vacuum. Culture does not happen in a vacuum. People and communities make it happen out of a desire and a need. Conscious alludes to multiple things, but it alludes to conscious consumption to be more sustainable and more ethical and a real alternative to what is currently available, which is currently killing our planet, and relates, and the word conscious also relates to the word conscience, something that has a conscience, clothing with a conscience. It also refers to the term consciousness raising, which is an activist tactic that centres education and community engagement. As previously stated, the end goal of counterconscious is not to make clothes. It is to present radical alternatives that are for the people and of the people, and that this can be open and created in many ways. This can be in the content of the clothing. Is it recycled? Is it handmade? Is it a particularly sustainable fibre? What does the clothing itself have going for it? This can be in the structure of counterconscious as an organisation, which could include things like, well, it's already a non-profit, and options such as workers' cooperatives are being explored. And on top of that, actually being accountable, being out in the community, for the community, part of it, not removed, not selling to, being included in, which is very, very different to how things currently operate within the industry. This includes the things that are already happening at Counterconscious, the work that goes on daily as a part of building it, as a part of being in the community. The goal is to be of service to the community, and that means that hopefully with every purchase of a clothing or apparel item, money will go towards funding these community activities, and in turn it creates a revenue stream where people of these communities can give back to the communities, and it becomes a reinforcing cycle through the work, through the passion, through the giving and a gifting cycle, and through the work that goes through my hands and hopefully other people. And hopefully in this way, that means that the clothing becomes as authentic as possible, because when you purchase a clothing item, it's not just about the aesthetics that you purchased. The money is going towards something radical, and it's going towards something real. And this, because it is a radical alternative, obviously built on other things that I'll get to in a moment, is something very new. I do not think that in the way that I am trying to do this, it has been done before. Counterconscious is drawing on some ideas that already exist, but is hopefully putting them together in a new and unique way. Many charities and organisations already sell things like apparel to fund their activities, but often they are plain t-shirts with a very, in my opinion, run-of-the-mill print, as they are often trying to be fairly lowest common denominator and approachable to a mass market, which is fine, but not necessarily the vision. There are shops set up by really interesting people like Madeline Pendleton, who founded a alternative clothing brand called Tunnel Vision, who internally have a workers' cooperative structure and do have some interesting environmental options, although what is sacrificed in terms of including things like polyester fabric is kind of an option and a tension between that and making sure that they have a slavery-free supply chain, as they know all of their factories and are able to visit them, because it's a brand where things are made in America, so they're very much focusing on workers' rights, which is great. But again, does have this give and take where I would like something more in terms of their fibre content. There's also other things like reselling vintage that fits within the ideas of the non-profit, the organisation. For example, wanting to serve the goth community, so trying to perhaps find pieces that are 1980s and in keeping with that aesthetic. Workers' cooperatives themselves are not new and have existed for a very long time, as have other labour rights and egalitarian structures. But I don't see them currently being applied within the fashion industry particularly, which is something that I would like to attempt. All of this culminates in wanting something authentic, real. It's making a real impact. But unlike Tunnel Vision and charity fundraising shops, there should also be an alternative in terms of the style of the clothing, drawing on designers such as Matty Boven to create something that's really pushing fashion and what we can do with that fashion and what we can do with aesthetics, and creating something new and elevated and more fashion forward. This isn't all of it, and there's a lot of inspiration and various parts going on here, but this is the goal. to have a radical community-based organization of some form that sells clothing that is more ethical and more sustainable, is of an alternative and counter-cultural style that in itself gives back to the community.